Professor McGonagall is a wonderfully powerful witch who has always been the best at what she does and has made a major difference in her students' lives as they attend Hogwarts School for Witchcraft and Wizardry. There are many things about her life that she has kept to herself and pains that she has suffered that she does not allow to affect her job, events that she has never talked about. Follow along this timeline of Professor Minerva McGonagall's life, both the unknown and as we know it. October 4th, 1935. Minerva McGonagall was born to Robert McGonagall, a Muggle Presbyterian minister, and his wife, Isabel McGonagall, a witch that had left her magic behind her when she married a Muggle man. Her namesake comes from her maternal grandmother, who was a very powerful witch. Although the parents were delighted to welcome their first child into the world, Isabel worried about the secret she had been keeping since she met Robert. Her child was certainly going to possess magical abilities as she did, but her husband knew nothing of this due to the statute of secrecy. Minerva McGonagall began to show signs of magic at an incredibly early age, summoning toys from shelves, making her father's bagpipes play by themselves, and even controlling the family cat. Isabel tried to keep herself and Minerva isolated for a few days at a time, in order to attempt to keep the truth from her husband, though she knew it wouldn't last. Finally, she confided the truth to her husband and explained that he could not tell anyone about the powers that she and their daughter had. Despite the shocking news, Robert and Isabel remained together and went on to have 2 more children, Malcolm and Robert Jr. In October of 1946, Minerva McGonagall received her letter to Hogwarts, which was currently run by Headmaster Dippet. She began to prepare to leave the home for the following school term. She made a trip to Diagon Alley with her parents, where her father got to see magic for the first time outside of his family. When getting her school supplies, Minerva was chosen by a wand that was quite unusual and very suitable to her. 9.5 inches, fur, and dragon heartstring. Elegant, refined, and very powerful, much like Minerva McGonagall herself. September 1st, 1947. It was time for the train to leave for Hogwarts, and her mother was sobbing as her oldest child left for the magical school. Minerva could not be more excited to finally be with others like her. While her mother was not only proud of her daughter, but also jealous as she saw the reminders of what her life used to be before she gave up her magic. When she arrived at Hogwarts, and it was time for the sorting ceremony, Minerva spent more time with the sorting hat than anyone else. A hat stall, where the sorting hat was unsure of which house would best suit the new student. Minerva spent 5.5 minutes in front of the school while the hat debated between placing her in Gryffindor or Ravenclaw. Both an incredibly brave and intelligent young girl. After a great deal of time, with all students staring and waiting for something to happen, the sorting hat finally placed Minerva McGonagall into Gryffindor. Minerva attended Hogwarts from September of 1947 to June of 1954. During her time at the school, she was top of her classes and became especially gifted in Transfiguration. Her test scores all came back with outstandings, including both her OWLs and her Newts. She was even given an award for Transfiguration Today's Most Promising Newcomer Award. She befriended Pomona Sprout, a Hufflepuff girl that was 2 years younger than her. Pomona was very homesick when she started at school, and so Minerva gifted her a fanged geranium, a magical flower with sharp teeth that could be used for a number of different potions. This gift, to which Pomona named Gerald, is what started Sprout on her love of herbology. And it is said that her plant grew and thrived along with the girls' friendship, as Sprout still had Gerald when she was teaching at Hogwarts herself many years later. While she was at school, Minerva McGonagall had spent a great deal of time with Professor Dumbledore, as she was so proficient at Transfiguration. He helped ensure that she would excel with her talents. He assisted Minerva in becoming an animagus and registering with the Ministry of Magic. A tabby cat. Minerva was also a skilled Quidditch player, playing for the Gryffindor team from her 3rd year to her 7th. The team had quite the rivalry with Slytherin, who Minerva had always wanted to be part of the team that crushed them and brought the House Cup to her own house. Just when Gryffindor thought this possible, her final year at school, and the final match that would declare the winner of the House Cup. A foul from the Slytherin team sent Minerva to the hospital wing. She had been knocked unconscious with a concussion and several broken ribs, resulting in Gryffindor losing the match and Slytherin winning the House Cup. In the summer of 1954, Minerva was offered a position at the Ministry and decided to go home to spend one last summer with her family before moving to London to start her career. While home, she met a young boy in the Muggle village, Douglas McGregor, son of a local farmer. He was funny, handsome, clever, and quite charming. The two spent nearly the entire summer together, laughing, having intellectual disagreements, and falling head over heels in love. Douglas proposed to Minerva less than a week before she was meant to go to London. She immediately said yes, but when she returned to her home that night, she began to rethink her answer. If she married a Muggle, she would have to follow in the steps of her mother, hiding her magic and pretending like all of her gifts and talents just didn't exist. Her career would be over before it began. The next morning, she rejected his proposal, and 3 days later, she moved to London. From the fall of 1954 to the summer 1956, Minerva worked for the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. She struggled with her time in the Ministry. She didn't enjoy her time in London as much as she had thought, and she dealt with anti-Muggle co-workers while she still held her love for Douglas and her great admiration of her father. And she missed her home life. She continued to put herself up to high standards. She excelled at her job and became one of the most gifted employees that had been in her department, and grew close with her boss, Elphinstone Urquhart. After the 2 short years that she worked for the Ministry, she was offered a prestigious promotion from Elphinstone, but she declined. Instead, she wrote to Hogwarts School inquiring for a job. It was only a few hours later that she heard a response from Professor Dumbledore, who had just moved from being the Transfiguration to the new headmaster of the school. Dumbledore was eager to offer her the position of the Transfiguration Professor. September 1956. Minerva began her time at Hogwarts. She was a stern teacher, but quickly became a favorite of her students, inspiring them to try their hardest. She went on to become the head of Transfiguration and the head of Gryffindor, and sometime later she became the deputy headmistress. During her years teaching, she learns from her mother that Douglas McGregor had gotten married. Her mother did not know of their relationship and did not know that the information would hurt Minerva so, but the young professor was heartbroken. As much as she was sure that she made the right decision years ago, Minerva still wondered if it was a life missed when she turned down her true love's proposal. Professor Dumbledore found her crying in her classroom after she received the news, and Minerva confided in her boss and mentor. Dumbledore also shares a bit of his family history with her, in the hopes to make her feel better and realize that though the decisions seem tough and possibly wrong, that they can often be for the best. The First Wizarding War lasted from 1970 to 1981. During that time, Minerva was loyal to Dumbledore, though she did not join the Order of the Phoenix, a secret society made to bring down Voldemort. Instead, she put her efforts into using her animagus form to helping the Ministry, spying on Death Eaters as a cat and reporting back to the Ministry and its Aurors. She was able to survive due to most not knowing of her animagus form and made it through the war physically unharmed. She did, however, suffer loss from the war, as most did. Her youngest brother, Robert Jr., had been murdered by a Death Eater. 2 of her favorite students, Lily and James Potter, had been targeted by Voldemort. And Douglas McGregor had been killed when a group of Death Eaters had decided to attack a random Muggle village. After the news of the Potters' deaths traveled through the wizarding world at such speed, Minerva quickly learned of Dumbledore's intentions for the orphaned Potter boy and met him at the Dursley house when it was time to give the boy to his aunt and uncle. Late 1981, after the war was over, Minerva spent more time with her old boss Elphinstone, who she remained in touch with throughout her time at Hogwarts. He first proposed to her after the war had ended, as he had never stopped loving her, and the two had both made it out alive. Though she turned him down, and they remained friends, he continued to propose with the hopes that she would eventually say yes. One summer, as the two were taking a stroll around the Great Lake, Elphinstone proposed again, and Minerva agreed. Elphinstone, who had retired from the ministry, got the two of them a cottage in Hogsmeade for an easy commute for Minerva. And though the two did not have any children of their own, her nieces and nephews came to visit her often and provided her with great fulfillment. In 1985, just 3 years into her marriage, Elphinstone had accidentally been bitten by a venomous tentacula, which led to his death. After his funeral, Minerva could not bear the thought of living in the cottage alone, where she would be left to think of her first love that could never be, and her husband that was no longer with her. She packed up her things and returned to her private room at Hogwarts. 1991. Minerva was happy to see the list of names that came through for the next term of Hogwarts. Harry Potter, who she had ensured was going to be all right living with his aunt and uncle, was turning 11 and would be starting school soon. With the return of Harry Potter, Dumbledore grew concerned that Voldemort would try to come back to power, and he tasked Minerva with one of the defenses for the Sorcerer's Stone, a chess game that would only let someone through if they won the match. She also had the hopes for the first time in years that Gryffindor would be able to bring home the House Cup when she saw Harry Potter's natural ability on a broom. And though she was happy to see Voldemort's plan to return had failed, she had to come to terms with the fact that Quirrell, who she had worked with for years, had been assisting the Dark Lord. 1992. Minerva spent the year fearing for her students as Voldemort made a second attempt to return. The Chamber of Secrets had been opened, something that had happened before, years before she had attended Hogwarts herself. Students were being petrified, and no one could figure out what was happening. Despite the new defense against the dark arts teacher claiming to know all. 1993. Minerva was delighted to see her previous student, Remus Lupin, take the position of defense against the dark arts teacher. She knew of his condition and was happy to see him managing it and still having a normal life. However, with the overbearing news of Sirius Black's escape from Azkaban, the school was on edge as they all waited for the known murderer to come after Harry Potter. 1994. Minerva tried to save Harry from a dangerous tournament, one that he never should have been able to enter. However, the Ministry said that Harry had no choice, and Dumbledore thought it best if things were allowed to play out. She loaned her classroom to Harry Potter and his friends, allowing him practice for the different tournament tasks. The year ended with a terrible turn of events with Voldemort's return and the death of a student, Cedric Diggory. 1995. After the return of Voldemort, Dumbledore restarted the Order of the Phoenix, to which Minerva joined this time. She spent much of the summer between terms doing work for Dumbledore as everyone in the Order worked to figure out what Voldemort's next move was. Professor Dumbledore was unable to find a replacement for the defense against the dark arts post, which led the Ministry to fill the post for him. Dolores Umbridge, she fed into the narrative of Dumbledore overthrowing the Ministry and turned Hogwarts into a horribly strict place with no room for learning. She had to watch the connection between Voldemort and Harry grow stronger, the boy becoming more stressed with each passing day. And things took a turn for the worst when Umbridge was firing Hagrid with the force of Aurors. Minerva tried to intervene and ended up going to St. Mungo's when she hit with 4 stunning spells. 1996. Minerva was happy to see the school year fall back to some form of normalcy without the Ministry hanging over them. There were several points in the year where she worried for the safety of her students, though that was now becoming normal too. Katie Bell had been cursed, Ron Weasley had been poisoned, and Draco Malfoy was mixed up in something with Voldemort thanks to his parents. At the end of the term, when Dumbledore informed her and other members of the Order to patrol the school, Death Eaters had managed to get into the school. During a battle in the Astronomy Tower, the Death Eaters had made their way into the school. Bill Weasley was injured by Fenrir Greyback, and Albus Dumbledore was murdered. Her teacher, mentor, colleague, and friend, gone. She had to move quickly for the sake of Hogwarts. She prepared for Dumbledore's funeral and the steps she would have taken in order to take over as headmistress. Having been the deputy headmistress for years, it was the logical step. 1997. Severus Snape was the headmaster, and Minerva remained at Hogwarts to keep her students as safe as possible while Voldemort gained control. Death Eaters were appointed for the empty defense against the Dark Arts Post, and students had reformed their own rebellion that they had named Dumbledore's Army, their own fight against the Dark Lord. May 1st, 1998. Hogwarts was under attack and her students. Every one of Voldemort's followers was on the school grounds and looking for Harry. Minerva did everything in her power to make sure that they made it through this war alive. She evacuated the school, attempting to get as many students back home as possible. At the end of the night, she was proud to see Harry Potter standing there victorious. Voldemort was dead, but so were 50 other people that she knew and cared for. Students, Aurors, Order members, people that she had called friends. Remus Lupin, Nymphadora Tonks, Fred Weasley, Colin Creevey, Lavender Brown, and so many others. June 1998. Minerva McGonagall is appointed the new headmistress of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, replacing Severus Snape, who had died in the final battle. She had no intention of adding Snape's portrait to the wall in her new office beside the other previous headmasters of the school. However, Harry Potter explained the man's true intentions and loyalties, and his portrait was placed on the wall. May 1999. 1 year after the war, and after a full term at Hogwarts where students did not fear their safety, Minerva held a memorial in the courtyard for the events of the previous year. A time for students to mourn their losses and be grateful that the school still stood as it did. She also used this time to demonstrate and teach the students of the shield charms that had been used that day. Minerva McGonagall continued to run Hogwarts until at least 2021, where she welcomed in the next generation of Weasley Potter children. Neville Longbottom replaces Pomona Sprout on her retirement. Minerva continues to be an inspiration to her students, putting their knowledge and safety above all else. Minerva was deeply dedicated to these children and took great pride in watching them grow and become their own person. She may not have had any children of her own, but her love expanded to many throughout the school. The magical world of Harry Potter is filled with untold stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see the lives of many witches and wizards, whose stories are hidden amongst the tragedy of the Second Wizarding War.